Hey everybody, welcome to Hashing It Out. I'm Jordan Mack. I'm a senior software engineer here at the Nervos Foundation, and with me today is Mick Blackwell, who is an indie game developer and the founder of Blitz TCG. How you doing today, Mick?
Doing well. Happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you about a few things. So before we get started, though, I got to mention three things. There's no price discussion today because this is a live show. No discussion of future exchanges or any other confidential information like that, and all opinions are of the individuals, not of the Nervos Foundation. So today we're going to be talking about building a blockchain-enabled indie game, specifically Blitz TCG, which is a self-funded, gameplay-first, blockchain-enabled card game. So I think the best way to approach this is we just start all the way at the beginning. What got you started in video games and card games?
Video games and card games. Yeah. So I don't know. Ever since I was like 8 or 9 years old, man, I've been collecting Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and dueling with my buddies, like, late at night, crying when I lost my favorite Blue Eyes White Dragon and those sorts of things. So it's been ingrained in me for a really long time. And once I got my first job out of college, I went and I tried to collect all my old cards. So I went on Amazon, on eBay, and I built up a couple binders worths of different cards and whatnot. And then I started to realize, like when I was doing these Google searches, that some of these cards are worth an extraordinarily large amount of money, and I didn't really understand why. And it comes down to this concept of graded cards, and you can basically get a card graded from a scale of 1 to 10. And if it gets a 10, it goes up, faster than a cryptocurrency going to the moon, right? It's a times 10 times 100 multiplier, at least back then, many years ago. So I got real deep into that before I even got into cryptocurrency, and I did very well in that space, and have since. Well, I shouldn't say have since that. The money that I made doing that, like investing in my hobby, is what I am using to fund the development of this card game. So it's sort of like card game inception, if you will.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I know. When I was in middle school, I had a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. He was showing me all of his binders full of cards, and I really
Yeah.
didn't think too much of them at the time. But you fast forward a couple decades later, his cards were worth well over $1 million. And
Yeah.
so when
Scary.
yeah, it's crazy when these things get popular, like these old cards, these original prints, they really get a
Skyrocket.
lot of value. Yeah. So specifically though, what is it that made you want to do a card game? I mean, as opposed to doing like
Hmm.
a general video game or something like that.
It's a good question. Yeah. So the answer I would say I typically give, because I still very much believe into it even after a couple years of doing development. And that is one of the major barriers right now, even after, like, I would say 7 years of blockchain being popularized, is the fact that people still don't really get it, right? And it's still kind of like this miscellaneous abstract thing. People don't really see the value in blockchain technology. The reason I give that background is because, ironically enough, one of the best ways to demonstrate blockchain value is with something a little more tangible than tokens or NFTs, right? Like that, even those words don't mean anything to anybody. But if you say trading cards, like people immediately, they're like, all right, I know what a Charizard is. I'm like, my mom knows what a Pikachu is, right? Like we know
Hmm.
trading cards. And just by chance, the blockchain happens to do trading cards really, really well. And it does them really, really well because they're effectively just a currency, right? And because they're like a currency, like, one Charizard equals one Charizard, you don't even have to do too much work to get it to naturally make sense to people. And so that, along with my passion for video games and card games specifically, led me down that path.
Right. So, I mean, it sounds like you have a very firm understanding of blockchain and what is some of its strengths and therefore actually its weaknesses too, which is a
Mm,
lot of it is public perception.
yes.
What got you started in blockchain?
About 2 years. So I come from a background in healthcare IT. I worked at a large healthcare IT company called Epic here in, I still live in Madison, Wisconsin, here in Madison, Wisconsin. And 2 years into my tenure there, one of my buddies, he said, "Hey, you have to check out this thing called blockchain I see." He's like, "I think you'll love it, man. Like you'll love it. You'll think it's the coolest thing ever." And he was all about Ethereum at the time, right? He was a big Ethereum fanboy. This is when, right on the cusp of everybody figuring out blockchain was going to be the next big thing. So he introduced me to projects like Substratum, Lampix, like all these weird like miscellaneous Ethereum projects. Probably nobody's heard of anymore. Maybe they exist. I don't know. Um, but I was just super interested in some of the problems that this technology was attempting to solve, like a decentralized internet, right? Like that's one thing I think that Substratum was doing. Lampix was doing and at the time I didn't, I was pretty ignorant, so shame on me. But they were trying to do cool stuff with like hardware and blockchain, which ultimately I think didn't end up making much sense. But the ideas were cool to me, right? So I got really deep into reading about all the different projects and all the different ideas these people had, and eventually investing pretty early on in blockchain myself. And from there, I've just kept up with the latest and greatest announcements from some of the bigger players in the space.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely, we're all still waiting for the decentralized internet, the true one. I
Right.
think that's still that's we're going to be waiting for a little while, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, one
Yeah.
step at a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Blitz TCG. Um, so it is a card game. Would you say that it's inspired by some of the card games you've played in the past, like Pokemon and those?
Yeah, I would say more so inspired by Hearthstone. I think Hearthstone, I take a lot of our game design decisions from a spiritual successor perspective. Of course, I've played Gwent, I've played Gods Unchained, which is a huge card game on the Ethereum network. And I've dipped my toes in many other physical card games too. But I think Hearthstone, when it originally released, and let me be specific, right? When it originally released, it was very good, and people were pretty passionate about the simplicity of it. They were passionate about the characters. They were passionate about the feel of it too. It felt very accessible. It wasn't overly complicated. Like anybody could pick it up and you could play a game without really any knowledge of video games. And so, yeah, I would say even like as recent as yesterday, I oftentimes open up a match of Hearthstone and I like refresh myself of how they approach things, because they did do a lot of things right. They drifted, in my opinion, away from kind of where they came from and where they started, much like many Blizzard related games. If you play any games, people will know what I'm talking about. But early on, it was an exceptional game. So.
Hmm. Okay, great, great. Let's see. So, for those that are really not familiar with some of these games, could you try to describe the gameplay a little bit, just for the average user?
Sure. Yeah, so we can kind of try to paint a picture here and tell a story. So with trading card games in general, I think most folks, will start at the very basic. You expect to have physical or digital trading cards. And more often than not, those trading cards have abilities and special effects written on the card. They might have health, they might have mana, they might have other resource values. And so a player, following the rules set by the game, would sort of aggregate and collect a bunch of cards, probably specific towards whatever strategy they had in mind for the game's rule set that they're playing. They'd assemble a deck together, or multiple decks, depending on the game. Sometimes they get pretty complicated. And then you might go to your local game store, or you might go online, and you would find a match. And so when you match against another player, or you go to your local game store with your, let's just say, Yu-Gi-Oh deck, Pokemon deck, almost always trading card games are all played sort of the same way. You sit down, or you look at your computer screen, and on your half of the screen or your half of the table you're playing on, you have a play mat, and Your opponent has the same thing on their side. The turn, it's a turn-based game, so you usually flip a coin or you make some sort of wager as to who goes first. And you play the game by the rule set as it is written. So maybe you draw one card each turn, you get to play one card each turn, and the ultimate goal of the game is to defeat your opponent. And that can mean different things in different games. For a game like Blitz, it's more similar to like the life point structure of Yu-Gi-Oh, where you sort of attack your opponent directly to eventually destroy their general or their champion or like their ultimate entity. And that's how you win the game.
Right.
Very high
right.
level, but hopefully that paints a decent
Yeah,
picture.
yeah, I think it does. And I mean, these types of games, for anybody who doesn't play them, they are extremely popular. I mean, there's tournaments all over the place
Yeah.
being held physically, and of course, there's the various video game versions of them too, which are played by millions and millions of people around the world. So, yeah, I don't know what the Hearthstone numbers are like these days, but I imagine, I mean, that's a Blizzard game, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a Blizzard
So.
title. Yep.
Yeah, so that's a big deal. Blizzard has been a major influential gaming company for decades now.
Huge.
So you don't happen to have any screenshots or anything that you could show us today, do you?
Sure, I could bring them up of what specifically of Blitz. I'd like to see some screenshots.
Oh
of
yeah,
Blitz.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if there's any screenshots or some early artwork or anything that you'd like to show, I mean, I'm sure anybody would
Yeah,
love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can show a bunch of stuff actually. Let me just, if you don't mind, take over this screen share. We can maybe walk together through a few examples. Yeah. Let's see. I'll do the entire screen. All right. Can folks see? Is that working? Can you see my screen?
I am not seeing anything. I'm not sure what's going on here.
I'm gonna try again. Screen one. Share. Maybe it says it's sharing.
Oh wait. Okay, yes. Now I have. How strange. Now I actually see two of them, but okay.
Oh, weird.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
Well, here we go. All right.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. So this is Blitz's website, and you all are welcome to come to this and navigate around as I'm showing this little demo, if you like. But this is live. It's public facing, and it demonstrates some of our artwork directly on the website. We have a team of like 12 different artists, all of which I would consider friends of mine at this point. We've been working together a long time. There's things like roadmaps and a white paper and whatnot on here that'll show you different examples of some of the game board designs and whatnot. But I think, for the sake of time and to not bore anybody, let's just go to we'll go to like at my YouTube channel, because we have a bunch of good information there for you. So Blitz typically does like monthly or so developer updates. So I like showing people what we're working on, and the best way to do that is oftentimes through this type of stuff. So luckily, throughout these videos and whatnot, and I'll just sort of click around in here and you can get a good sense of what Blitz looks like. So this is an example of, and again, if you're watching, feel free to play around. This is an example of Blitz's main menu once it sort of catches up with us quality-wise, hopefully. Let's see. It's probably, oh, there we go. Yeah, so this is like an example of Blitz's main menu. Login screen, let's see. This is an example of like the friends list, the global chat messaging system, very Hearthstone inspired type stuff, right? So you can see it's very simple. The UI isn't overwhelming, very colorful. You have stuff like online and digital PFPs that some of them will eventually be blockchain enabled, some not. The deck builder is something that people in my Discord have been helping me play test quite frequently. But I can show you an example of this. Of course, these are all just little placeholder images for the sake of testing various functionality. But I'll leave it there, and I'll say you're welcome to sort of explore these videos in your own time. You're welcome to explore the website, and you're welcome to come to the Discord because we have a lot of good discussions there, and you can see images, some previews of all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just one glance. I know that these are early versions here, and they're not fully complete, but the graphics and everything on there are top notch. I mean, that really
Thanks.
looks great.
Thank you. Yeah, I put quality above all else. I basically, let me put it this way. I think a lot of people like to use the phrase, it's not about money. But here's the reality of Blitz. It's more like a side project for me, right? So it's all self-funded, like we mentioned. There's no VCs involved. There's no monetary goal. And honestly, despite maybe somebody being upset, some people being upset about hearing this, like if Blitz gets to the point where I'm ready to release it and it sucks, I will not release it. It's similar to maybe an author who writes a book and upon finishing the story realizes that the story wasn't what they expected. And so if by the time I get to the end of Blitz, I am not personally happy with it and personally enjoying playing it, I won't release it. And at this point, transparently, I've sunk $45,000 to $50,000 into development and art efforts over 2 years. To me, that's a sunk cost. And it's if I never get that back, it's fine, right? We're already past the point of it mattering to me anymore. So it's a passion project first and foremost. I want to show people a better way to work with the blockchain. I want to hopefully utilize Nervos to even show people a better way to utilize the blockchain, where you don't have to just utilize one, you can utilize them all to some degree. So there's a lot of big ideas I have with Blitz, and sort of the avenue is a card game, but the ideas are what are important to me, even more than the card game itself. So anyway.
All right, so yeah, let's get into a couple of the terms that you actually use to describe this. So specifically, what is gameplay first? And when you say play to earn, not play to earn, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so gameplay first is, again, a phrase that is oftentimes thrown around in the gaming industry, especially nowadays. And it derives from the fact that these mega corporations like Blizzard, like EA, they release unfinished games. And this is pretty self-evident by really to anybody who plays video games, especially online video games, where within the first week, there's so many issues with the game that it's unplayable. And you might have invested $80 to $100 to be able to, play it on release, but there's really nothing to play because it's a piece of crap. So, to me, I'm a lifelong gamer. I stream all the time, and it's my biggest hobby. And that is the most frustrating thing to me, is when people hype up this game and the company makes all these promises and ultimately they all fall through, they fall flat. So like I said, with Blitz, it truly is a matter of putting my passion and my money where my mouth is. In that one, I will not sell a single thing. We've raised some money for charity. All right, so we've done that. I've collaborated with a few people to raise money for a charity, to raise money for Ergo development, which is another, of course, blockchain in the UTXO Alliance. But not a single thing for Blitz will be sold until people are able to play the game, and I feel like the game is good. I would rather release a free game without blockchain assets and have people play it and tell me it sucks before I actually sell anything. Because I don't want to, it's like we need to break away from this mentality that the world has fallen into, which is all like big game capitalism, and it's like ruining it for me, man. It's like ruining my gaming passion. So I'm trying to break away from that, show people you can do things a different way. It's a long-winded answer, but it's very important to me. So I'm sorry for sort of spewing my philosophy there. And then your second question was play and earn versus play to earn. So this is something that if I could go back in time and change, if I could go up there and shake the Gods Unchained developers, or shake these people who sort of kicked us off down the road blockchain currently is on when it comes to video games, I would tell them, one of the biggest mistakes you have made is you've used this phrase called play to earn. And if you just take a second to really reflect on that, Like nobody plays video games to earn. Like the only people playing them to earn are people who do it as their job, which has existed before the blockchain. So you have World of Warcraft gold farmers, you have RuneScape gold farmers. It's nothing new and it's nothing special to the blockchain. So if you're a gamer, you're not playing to earn anything. You're playing to have a be competitive. You're playing to win. You're playing to have fun, right? Like you're not playing to earn money. That's ridiculous. So what they should have said, and where I think they really messed up with the gaming community, which is why blockchain is so frowned upon, is they set that mentality in everybody's minds. And it sort of became more toxic over time. They're frustrated with EA, they're frustrated with Blizzard, and this sort of just spiraled into now blockchain is just another one of these things that we all hate, where just like a simple change in verbiage, like a simple shift in mindset to like saying you can play the game, but you can also earn while you play. Totally different approach to saying you're just playing to earn. Like play and earn is simply, like I would say again, it's comparable to RuneScape, right? Like you play an MMO like RuneScape, you're having fun, you're grinding it out, and you get a rare item drop. Or like Diablo, you get a rare item drop and you just happen, as you play the game, to be acquiring like digital wealth. And that is the frame of mind people should have taken, but we didn't. So now we all, and when I say we, I mean the people trying to support blockchain games and the people trying to develop on the blockchain really as a whole have an uphill battle because of stuff like this. And it's very frustrating to me. So I'm trying to change the narrative a little bit, if you will.
Yeah, we absolutely share a lot of that. There's quite a few gamers in our Godwoken team that focus on gaming, and this has been one of their biggest criticisms through the entire bull market, bear market cycles, is that we set false expectations, and really a lot of the games that have come out, because they didn't embrace gameplay first or anything, it's been gimmicky. That doesn't last. That's not sustainable, and it's not fun. It's left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, and that's really I think that's where it stems from. Also being kind of put into the same bucket as what publishers like EA did with microtransactions, where they instead of making it an add-on, it was if you want the whole game, you're just going to pay over and over again.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I mean it's of course like not every publisher has done these types of things, but it's been abused. It's absolutely been abused, and so I can see why people are pissed off right now. But I think that'll change, and this is a big step towards that. We got to set the example properly. So next part of this, you've mentioned several times that you are funding this yourself. Why no pre-sale?
Yeah, it goes back to that mentality of putting the gamer and the gameplay first, man. Like, I mean, this is the reality. All right, these are all statistics that are in the white paper, but you can Google them yourselves. Gods Unchained, they sold their cards about a year and a half before the game release. They made something like $5 million, give or take, on that pre-sale of their card game. Now, I don't knock those guys at all. They've influenced Blitz quite a bit, and they've helped me out by setting a good example for things to do and things not to do. So I do owe them a great deal of respect in that regard. However, I don't think any developer in their right mind can tell you that their first pass at something will be the right one. And so when you do a pre-sale for a video game, let's just all reflect on what that means. That's me saying that I'm selling you something that I'm so confident about that in a year and a half, it'll be exactly the same. And if you can tell me that with a straight face, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Because that is bullcrap, right? That's bullcrap. Like with any development, let alone like video games too, but like any development, right? Like if you can tell me with a straight face that the thing you're selling me is going to be the same thing I get in a year and a half for an actively in development project, that's crap. And sure enough, as data and the facts will tell you, the biggest problem with Gods Unchained at release, and I'm not picking on them. There's plenty other examples of this. It's just the one I know the best. The pre-sale cards that they sold, that they already put the abilities on them, they already put the stats on them. Well, a year and a half later, they realized, like, wait a second, maybe we didn't balance this right a year and a half ago when the game was still in development. So you can do one of two things in that scenario. One, you can do the balance in the game itself, and then you're going to have a conflict of what's on the blockchain versus what people are seeing in the game, which is kind of maybe even a legal issue, right? Like, what did you actually sell me? I'm using something that you said I could use, and now it looks different. Or you have to balance around it. And that's what they did. They balanced around it, at least this, since I've been included in this. And when you balance around it, well, what does that mean? It means things like blacklists come out. And blacklists are common in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. When a card is too powerful, it's no longer able to be used in standard competition. So when you do that, as a game developer, you shoot your gamers in the foot, you shoot yourself in the foot, and you shoot your investors in the foot, because you just thought you needed to sell things early to keep your company afloat. And in some cases, right, I'm not saying in all cases it's a bad thing. Development costs money. I find myself in a favorable situation where I've found low-cost ways to do things with high quality. I come from an extensive background in project management and business development, so I know maybe a bit better how to do these sorts of things. But some people don't, and sometimes things do cost a lot of money, and you have to raise capital. But sometimes you don't. And you certainly don't need $5 million. Let me tell you this. If you gave me $5 million right now, I don't even know what Blitz would look like. I can't, like, we would be releasing on Xbox or something, man. Because that's just so much, it's like a ridiculous amount of money. Like, all these projects getting that much money, I just don't know where it goes. Like, how do you spend $5 million, man? Like, I have no idea. I have no idea where it goes. But anyways, I'm getting down the wrong path here. I just think it's so funny.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of waste, unfortunately. But it depends on the kind of title that's being produced too. Of course,
Yeah,
like
of course.
the more complicated, they're good. There's big budget games out there that
Yeah.
$1 million just simply isn't enough.
No, you have 300 staff or something. Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so you're putting all this money in. There must be a way that this game is going to make money, though. How does it make money? How do you keep it sustainable in the long term?
Yeah, and when it comes to the monetary incentive of Blitz and card games as a whole on the blockchain, the other thing that I don't like that every other game in this space has done is overcomplicate their monetary model. So all Blitz is going to do is one-to-one replicate how trading cards work in real life. You go into Walmart, and in this case, Walmart is the internet. You go into Walmart, you go to the shelf, you see the packs of Yu-Gi-Oh cards on the shelf, you grab 5 of them, you pay for them, you take them home, and you open them. You're going to go to blitz.com, you're going to go to the shelf, that is a URL. You're going to buy the packs you want, you're going to maybe stay on Blitz, maybe not, go open them, and you're going to get cards. And there's nothing more to it than that. So to answer your question, it'll just be from the pack sales themselves and nothing else. It is worth mentioning too that I will balance Blitz to ensure that people who don't have the money and want to be able to play the game are able to play it on almost as equal footing as people who are able to buy cards. So there will be several trading cards that are not blockchain based. A few maybe you'll have to play like the campaign mode to unlock. But there will be enough free to play cards with the standard version of Blitz that you today could download it, or once it's released, I should say, could download it, and you could play an online match against somebody who has, 50 more cards. You might be at a slight disadvantage because, of course, with card games, the more cards you have, the more strategy you're able to develop with those cards. So it's not even a matter of cards being better a lot of times. It's more of a matter of I have access to more strategies than you don't. Therefore, I can probably outplay you more times than you can outplay me. nonetheless, that is the reality of trading card games. That's what people expect. Like nobody expects you to like magically generate Pokemon cards out of thin air if you go to a competition. So it's honestly a safe way to handle it because that's what people are used to and that's what people expect. Nothing more than that, though, right? Nothing more.
Right, right. Yeah, I've played that with several online card games where there's usually a free deck of some kind,
Yep.
or two or three basic free decks, which you're locked into, and but
Yep.
you can play completely just with everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah, and usually you're playing in kind of like a beginner level tier too,
That's
with
right.
other people that are locked into the same decks too, to make it
Yeah. Make
fun.
it
And
fair.
once you're ready,
Yep.
if you like the game, you buy some cards and you go into the real full game with all
Yep.
the really hardcore players.
Yep.
So you mentioned open source content. Could you tell us what that is and why it's important?
Yeah, and this gets down a bit of a rabbit hole, so I'll try to be as concise as possible. So number one, for the opinion of blockchain gaming to change, in my personal opinion, um, you need two things. You need to lower the barrier of entry so people aren't paying $1,000 for some randomly generated NFT that they just so happen to use in your video game. You can't have that. That's got to go away. Nobody wants that. Who's like a proper gamer? Maybe not proper is the right word, but like a gamer who's passionate about gaming doesn't want to spend $1,000 on some kitty cat NFT just to play the video game. So we have to get rid of that. And the second thing we have to do uh, is allow more community input and transparency into the projects themselves. So with Blitz, my vision for Blitz is way, way different. So it's always hard in these types of conversations to say it succinctly. My vision for Blitz is basically having all of our content be open source and open IP. And by open IP, what I mean here is utilizing the blockchain to facilitate the use of Blitz assets across game genres. So for example, if you know that Blitz's Charizard card's ID is ID ABC, and it's always ID ABC because that's what the blockchain is. It's a ledger. It's always ABC. Well, then there's no reason that if you develop your own card game and you want to use Blitz's art, you want to use Blitz's anything, that you can't reference that ID in your card game. Because there's a benefit to me for that. One, my characters get to live outside of my game. Two, you get a free character that people like and people already are familiar with and you can use and integrate into your game. And then supply and demand comes into play. So maybe you don't like Blitz, maybe you hate Blitz, right? But you really like this fighting game that you're playing where you get to use Charizard. Well, the only way to use Charizard is to have a Blitz card because that's what allows you to use Blitz IP is looking to that original ID. So then the developer of that game would just say, yeah, you unlock Charizard if ID ABC is in your blockchain wallet. All right, so then that user goes, he looks up Charizard ABC, buys it, and he goes to play his fighting game. He never touches Blitz. But what that does is take one card out of circulation, right? So if you have 5 games all sharing characters, and a few of these people only play 3 of the 5 games, 2 of the 5 games, 1 of the 5 games, all of a sudden you create scarcity dynamically. So now people want these characters for more than just Blitz. They want them for their other games. And I hope one day you see everybody adopt this mindset because one, it's really good for the developers, right? Because now the developers, like fresh out of college, don't have money. They're like, well, I don't even need to pay anybody to draw anything. I don't need to pay anybody to develop my characters. I can, like Blitz says, I can use all 170 of their characters for free as long as I reference their original IDs. Like, great, man. Like, sweet. I'm going to go make my own card game with 10 of Blitz's characters. This is awesome. And then it helps me, it helps them, it helps everybody. So everybody wins. And that's another thing I like about Nervos is that the slogan of the blockchain is everybody wins or something similar to that. So it resonates with me a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely a philosophy we've adopted, which is to be completely and open and transparent as much as possible, because we see it as the success of any project that is really our success as well. So
Yep.
it doesn't help to be like a protectionist, right?
Nope.
That's kind of I see that as old thinking, which we see over time that stuff tends to loosen up a bit, but especially
Mhm.
right now where we're trying to get more games developed out there, and a lot of these are coming from more traditional companies that didn't really have that option. They're still kind of clinging to the ways of the past on that.
Yep.
So here, let's switch the focus a little bit to the blockchain itself, and why you decided to incorporate the blockchain specifically. Would your game still work without any tokens at all?
This is the question every person who plays a blockchain game should ask the developers of the game or people in the community. Because this is the fact of the matter. The blockchain is not the saving grace of all technology. It is very good at doing certain things, and it does certain things very well. It is not good at doing other things, right? At least the platform we have today for blockchain as a whole, looking across 10 or so different projects, like the blockchain is not going to completely replace existing technology. It'd be silly to assume that, because it's just like quantum computing is never going to replace classical computers for typical things, daily use. So a similar example there, but at the end of the day, what the blockchain does the best is keep track of transactions and assets. And it does that in a way that other databases don't. I'll give you an example here that hopefully resonates. On World of Warcraft, Blizzard owns those servers. So if Blizzard one day decides to shut down World of Warcraft, which they've done, this is a real thing. They shut down World of Warcraft Classic. So this is an example that might resonate with folks. You have one of two options. One, you do some devious stuff and spin up your own servers, which has happened. But even when you do that, you've lost all your original characters, all your original progress. Or you wait for Blizzard you petition and you wait for Blizzard to re-release their own version of it, which they also did. Both of these things happen in reality. In both cases, though, let's say you spent 3,000 hours in original World of Warcraft. You've lost everything about your character. It's gone. It's shut down. It's gone. And that is because Blizzard servers, their databases are not public. They're private, right? They're private databases. They're not publicly accessible. They're not keeping track of all historical information forever and always. They're kind of just like this static little black box. Blockchain, to me, the reason it's so novel is because of one word, and it's public. It's a public ledger. It's a public database. And because it's public, what that means is, and this is where open source really pushes this into the next level. Let's say, knock on wood, it doesn't happen. Let's say I get hit by a bus. But Blitz's source content is completely open to use. And the assets, the stuff you really care about, are on the blockchain. All it'll take, even yourself on this call, maybe people watching, all it would take is for one person to spend about 2 hours to spin up like a Firebase server, copy and paste Blitz into it, and all of a sudden, and maybe people have to create their accounts again and link their wallets, but all of a sudden, you haven't lost everything because Blitz never owned the cards to begin with. You owned your cards. You owned those assets. It's not on my server. It's on the public server. It's on the public database. And unfortunately, that's the gap that we haven't spanned yet with the general society of gamers and just people, like my mom, my brother. They don't see that benefit yet. So we need more platforms like this, right, where we can get in front of people, tell real stories of situations like this that happen, like World of Warcraft and other, RuneScape was another good example of that, where they pivoted to RuneScape 3 and then eventually spun up old school RuneScape. Like there's examples of this happening all the time. And, people have to start over and they lose thousands of hours because the company decided to make a decision about something. or the company had to shut down, right? Because something unfortunate happened. Blockchain protects us from that. And that's, to me, the value of the blockchain. So everything on Blitz can be done without the blockchain. And everything about any other game that's ever been developed can be done without the blockchain. Anybody saying otherwise has lost their marbles, and just don't know, they just don't know enough to be able to say that. But the benefit blockchain brings that no other technology does is that it allows for that public transference of assets and like cards, even if the project fails. That's special to the blockchain, and that's why I'm using it.
Right. Very well said. Yeah, I've often talked about this distinction in the past. The way that I've stated it is that I don't believe that digital ownership in a public sense has ever actually existed up
Right.
until the blockchain was possible.
Yep.
It's always resided on somebody else's server, and
Yep.
that means it belongs to them. And so the blockchain is really the only place that it can exist that we have in the world today, because it is truly a decentralized system.
Yep.
I don't think people realize that because there's not a huge amount of use cases for that. It's something that never existed before. So the
Nope.
way we're going to see that play out in the future is probably yet to be seen.
Agreed.
So let's keep moving forward because we're running a little bit short on time now.
I like to talk, so I apologize.
Well, you're a great speaker. We're glad to hear all of that. So I'm sure you have different chains planned for support. Which ones do you have? And you've also mentioned UTXO chains. Why specifically UTXO?
Yeah, UTXO. You know, I kind of found my way into this space. Frankly, I was an Ethereum fanboy many years ago, as we sort of talked about originally. But I got into a project called Chia, which is a novel approach to some things in the blockchain space. And then from their platform, I heard about Ergo. Love the Ergo community. They supported me a lot, and I owe those guys a lot. Dan, Joe, and all the leaders over there. From there, I stumbled into Cardano. And Cardano, I was like, wow, this is not sure why these guys are getting so much flack, because it looks like they've thought the most about some of the problems that need to be thought about. And then, you know, last but not least, I stumbled into Nervos, and the thing that compels me the most is one of my long-term visions for Blitz has always been, this sounds really bad, but I don't really care that much about a specific blockchain, frankly. Like, it doesn't make too much of a difference to me what blockchain people use or what they're tooting or sounding off on. I mean, I'm developing a video game. If the blockchain is the most important part of my video game, it's probably a pretty crap video game. So, right, like I've never really cared that much, but I want to utilize what we just talked about. It does have very tangible benefits to a game like mine, so I need to use it. But I don't really care which one I use. So then when I see a project like Nervos that is attempting to become this, I think it's called a universal passport to other blockchains, and sort of serve as this agnostic stepping stone, that's very compelling to me. So the short answer to your question is, I want to launch on Ergo because I owe them a lot. I want to launch on Cardano because they've received Blitz very well. But, and this is the last and final addition to the repertoire for now, partnering with Nervos to make a game that is blockchain agnostic. Now that's special, right? That could be something very compelling for a lot of people, especially when it's frankly as simple as Blitz is, which is simply trading card assets. There's really nothing more complicated to it than that. So it's, in my opinion, a pretty good pilot, if you will, to show people how this sort of thing could work, because it is so simple. It's very, like, it's conceptually, people can get it. So those are the three I'm launching on. UTXO, you know, welcome to throw, I think I linked a video at some point, but welcome to throw that into the chat or put it in the description. There's a nice video out there that'll do a better job than me at explaining the different pros and cons of the two primary blockchain models, which are the UTXO, unspent transaction output model, versus the account model, which is something like Ethereum uses. For people watching and maybe watching in the future, the UTXO model is used by Bitcoin, Ergo, Nervos, Cardano, I think technically Chia, and many others, whereas like Ethereum and others on that side of the fence use the account-based model. I'll say one more thing, I guess. The major sticking point between the two was originally UTXO was very good at doing things in parallel, and that just means scalability. Scalability was really, really high with UTXO blockchains. Account-based blockchains are really good at smart contracts. But nowadays, as technology evolves, we have these things called eUTXO, which is extended unspent transaction output, and we have things like contracts, smart contracts, and other development flowing into projects like Ergo and Cardano and Nervos. So it's honestly, the account-based model has become, in my eyes, much less appealing because the UTXO model has sort of already spanned the gap for why people originally used the account-based model in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I think I can add a little bit to that.
Sure.
And by the way, I have put that video that you mentioned into the chat room, and I'll put it into the show notes as well later. That's UTXO versus account model.
Yeah.
But a lot of that deals with the scalability aspect, which we pretty much know, hands down, that the scalability of a UTXO blockchain is inherently much more than the account model used by Ethereum. They openly acknowledge that it's a problem.
Yeah.
And the reason why this is a problem for developers in particular is exactly what we've seen happen several times in Ethereum already, which is the blockchain can't scale, so it gets congested, and then all of a sudden during a bull market, it becomes completely unusable by anybody but the super rich traders out there who are moving around, $10 million each time. So the $200 transaction fee doesn't matter to them. But imagine if you're trying to just play a card game, it makes it unusable. You're forced to just you can't do it. So I mean, we've already seen this play out multiple times. Every time this happens, there's a mass exodus from Ethereum. Developers are again scrambling to go to other chains just so their product can continue to work properly.
Yep.
So what about crossplay? Since you're supporting 3 different chains at launch, is there going to be any different? Are we going to be segregated, or are we going to be able to play against other blockchains as well?
Yeah, man, and that's kind of the beauty of using both Web 2 and Web 3. So Web 2 is, we also use a lot of phrases in the blockchain space that don't mean anything to most people. So Web 2 is like, just like your typical internet, what everybody's used to using, your typical game servers. Web 3 is like blockchain. So mixing Web 2 and Web 3 together, you can create a very intelligent and happy medium where Web 2 is used for things like matchmaking. It's used for things like user accounts, which you probably don't want on the blockchain, and some other things, right, that you don't really want to be out there on a public database. So the short answer is, it doesn't matter what blockchain you use, because the only thing that Blitz is using the blockchain for is the stuff that, in my opinion, the blockchain is good at, and everything else is going to be open source and on Web 2. And there's benefits of that too, because again, if I get hit by a bus, it can be spun back up pretty quickly without any knowledge of the blockchain or anything like that. So,
right. Well, one feature here that I'm going to throw out there, this is my own personal request, is I would love to see some statistics or some kind of a scoreboard that has the segregation between the different blockchains.
Of course.
Okay. So I'd love to see that, because I want to make sure that we're up at the top of the list.
Yeah.
We're going to gang up. We're going to gang up on this, and we're going to make sure Nervos is on top. Okay, so we are really running low on time, and we can go a couple minutes past, definitely, because we started a little late. But let's talk about the challenges so far. So why don't we start in just the game design? Why don't you just give us a overview of some of the challenges that you worked through?
Yeah, my background was engineering and mathematics, so I don't have a strong coding background. I basically got into it pretty deep a few years ago, taught myself all this stuff. And I don't mean that to brag at all, because in fact, it's definitely been an uphill battle, because it doesn't come as naturally to me than maybe others. What I am very good at is structure. That's sort of what engineering gives you, right? It lets you solve problems and build structure. So the easy part, we'll start with that, was I was very quick to think through infrastructure, why I would use the blockchain, why I would use Firebase, which is our Web2 real-time database for stuff like user data, who's going to handle matchmaking, stuff like that came very easy. What's come harder is, I can make a lot of nice looking pictures and tell people a good story, and convince people that we're doing the right thing, but then actually doing it is difficult. So for me, actually the hardest part has been taking that theory and putting it into practice, even in things as simple as, like, to some, like a game engine and C#. And, here's a good example. Like, I don't have any experience querying APIs or querying the blockchain. So I had to have somebody help me with that and show me how to do it. But, once somebody shows me how to do it, now I can integrate with Ergo and Cardano, and it's all working. It's beautiful. It's fast, whatever. But yeah, I tell you what, man, just transparently, I'll be the first to tell you, programming does not come as easily to me as it does to others. I power through it and I get it done, and I make sure it looks nice when it's done. But if I was a better programmer, I think things could move a little faster. That's been the hardest part for Blitz so far. The ideas, I think, are very sound. If I'm being a little bit conceited on that, I think that it's a pretty sound idea. We always aim for high quality, and our ideals are very strong. So it's execution. It's execution on the code would be the most challenging part.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Especially one that I'm kind of foreseeing here too is that it's probably going to be, as you adopt more and more blockchains, each platform is going to be a little bit different. And so I'm sure there's overlap in the conceptual stuff, but the code is always going to be a little bit different.
Right.
Like you mentioned already, your early integrations with Ergo and Cardano. And what we haven't mentioned, me and Mick have already talked about this. He's waiting on me. I owe him some code and stuff to demonstrate how this stuff is done. And it's going to be completely different than the Ergo and Cardano versions. It's entirely different. So there's no way that he could just transfer it over. He's waiting specifically on me for this one. So let's talk about some of the timelines though. How far along is the game today?
Yeah, so happy to say, let me take one step back. There's 170 different characters that I want to have at launch. It's a lot of characters. At first, I only had 3 artists on my team, and I realized that's not going to work. So I scaled up to 12 artists to just get it done within a year. We just hit about 80% card artwork completed, which is a big milestone. It means we're in the upper quartile of being done with all this card art design. We are working on matchmaking in earnest now. So like Ergo is properly integrated with Blitz's client, the game client. That's all working fine. Cardano is actually good to go too, but I have to do some work on the website to allow users to link a wallet. And once I do that, Cardano will also be working. So the short answer is matchmaking is under development. Most of the core foundation is in place. And my goal is to release Blitz by the end of the year. But again, I don't like to overpromise. And if I'm not happy with it, it won't come out until it's ready. But that's the goal. Like when you talk about a goal, that's my goal. And it is achievable, assuming nothing unexpected sort of comes out of the ether, which sometimes those things happen. You never know. But right now we're on track. Like I'm confident, and I'm optimistic enough to say it out loud, which is even a big step for me. So yeah, end of year, hopefully.
Right. 170 cards. I didn't realize there were that many. That is a lot. That is a massive undertaking, especially for an indie game like yours. That is surprising to me. I thought it would be less than half that for sure.
Mm-mm.
And then how are all these cards organized in the packs? How does that work?
Yeah, man, it's a good question. So there's um, sort of 20 of those cards are going to be free to play cards, so that you'll just have those at release. No difference in quality compared to any of the others. It's just the 20 cards I'm setting aside for that purpose. And in Blitz, this is where I get very passionate about. There's 5 factions. There's Dark Matter, there's the Tinkerers, there's the Masquerades, and there's all these fun clans and different races and demons and scientists, and all coming together. So the free to play cards have a mix of all these characters from the different clans, so you get a feel for how each of them play and how each of them look. So then if you want to invest in a particular set, you can, because you would have gotten your feet wet with it. The packs themselves, going back and forth on this, my goal really is to lower the barrier to entry. So the packs themselves, I'm thinking between 5 to 7 cards a piece, probably 7 at this point, because I don't want people to spend a ton of money just to play the game that they want to play. One of the things that I also want to do, I just don't know if it's going to be at release, is I never want to introduce a token into Blitz per se, because you just don't need it. The question you asked me earlier is like, could you do what you do without a token? By a token, I mean like a currency, like a Blitz token. Now, there's a different idea, a different way to approach this that nobody's really done, and we don't have enough time to talk about it here. But if you made a closed loop economy where the only tokens that are generated are from the cards that people burn, and those tokens can then be used to buy additional packs, it basically creates this loop where that even if you buy a pack for $5 and you don't want 5 of those cards, you could burn those 5 cards, but then get, maybe 75% of the way to another pack, and then just play a couple games. Maybe we have that play to earn model stood up, and then you can just get a pack for free, and then take another shot at getting more cards. What I don't want is this weird token model that people use as an excuse to make money. Because if the token doesn't serve a purpose for the game, it shouldn't be in the game. So for Blitz, if I do release a token, I want it to be closed loop, which will be a very novel thing, frankly. Not many people have done that or even thought through the implications of doing that. But we've started mapping it out. I'm not confident enough yet to go any further than that.
Right. Yeah, well, it definitely sounds interesting. I think that there's potential behind the concept you described, especially if something happens, like the cards that you choose to burn are from the older edition or something, and by burning them, you're actually making it much, much more scarce. You're increasing the potential value of those early sets. So there is a lot of potential there, I think. So you said that the game's your target for launch of the full game is the end of the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I get that right? Okay.
Right.
What about the packs themselves? Are they going to go on sale before that, or do we have to wait all the way?
You will wait all the way. Yeah, and everybody will wait all the way. There will be no pre-sale. So the point at which you can download a .exe file is the point at which the packs will be available for purchase.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait. But I'd love to see some early beta versions or something that once they're playable, I'd love to mess around with something like that. So let's see. I'm looking at the chat here. I don't see really any questions out here. So that's good. And then I think we've probably. Are you still there? It looks like you might have just frozen up. Hello, Mick. Are you there? I think we might have just lost you, unfortunately. Let's see. Yeah, I think you did. Okay. Well, well, anyway, we were just about to wrap up. So let me see if we can get him back on here just to say goodbye. Let's see. I'm sending him a message right now. Okay, there we go. He's coming back on. All right, we lost you there for a minute. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
the meeting just froze. When you froze, you were like,
oh, what? Not again. Wait.
yeah. It's
Okay,
so
you're
weird.
back again. All right.
It's weird.
All right,
Man.
so we're having, yeah, technical difficulties today. I don't know. I don't know. At
Two
least
tech
it's
guys.
not.
How many tech guys does it take to figure out online meeting?
Oh, you know what? You know what? Me and my coworker Travis were just talking about this the other day. It's like, it's amazing that we've now been trying to use VoIP and video chat for decades now, and it still doesn't work as well as the landline phones used
Yeah,
to.
man.
It's like one of these days, they got to get this right. Anyway, so we were just about to wrap up here. Anyway, and any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, I want to thank the Nervos community again for being so welcoming to me. Made a nice Reddit post, and people were very receptive. And that honestly, for small game developers and people like myself who are doing passion projects, that kindness goes a long way. Any amount of support you want to show Blitz is always appreciated. And just know, and I truly mean this, I've done a bit of marketing in my 9 to 5. Any bit of support you give Blitz goes a lot farther than you think, whether it's just a mention in a comment, talking to your friends about it, just getting excited and contributing to the Discord. So to continue to do that would be my only ask. And if you don't, that's okay too. I appreciate your time and thank you for being so welcoming to your community.
Right. Well, Mick, it's been a pleasure having you on. Absolutely. I think you really understand this stuff well. I really like your philosophy on this subject. And I know everybody in the Nervos community really does too.
Yeah.
So, of course, wish you the best for your launch. We're going to be watching that actively. And I think that really this game here, once you get it out there, this is going to be an inspirational point for a lot of indie game developers out there who are trying to build through, their first blockchain-enabled game. I mean, you're showing us that it's possible.
Thanks,
So
guys.
anyway, thanks again for joining. And what socials should people follow just to keep track of this?
Twitter's probably the best, even though I know that can be tough for many, including myself. I'm not a huge fan of social media, but I recognize the importance of it. Twitter is good for like artwork previews. My favorite platform, though, if I had to pick, would be our Discord, because that's just where I like interacting with people. You can talk to me. I also post game builds on there, and people try to break my development more often than I would like. So every time I have a new feature that I'm really happy about, I quickly get depressed because I realize that somebody broke it in 5 minutes. But if you like that sort of stuff, it'll help make Blitz better, and you get to play around with the game before it's even real yet. You can play around, you can create an account, and provide feedback. That's always very appreciated.
All right, great. All right, so yeah, we will add all of these links and everything to the show notes on the YouTube description probably pretty soon here after we wrap up the show and get all that stuff together for everybody. So thanks again, Mick, for being here today, and thanks to everybody watching. This is looking like a great project. We're really looking forward to it.
Thank you both. Yeah, and thank you all for helping me out here. Appreciate it.